Our problem-solving procedure is pretty much as it sounds. It's pretty self-explanatory. If someone has questions, please put them you raise your hand with your little avatar, and I will answer either during the presentation or at the end. So our problem-solving procedure. Okay. I don't know why my blanks. Okay. Sorry, you guys. It's not advancing. Shoot. Carry. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the purpose of our policy is basically 4 levels. EE is HR speak for employees. So we hope that employees take time to think through their issues, bring clear facts to their supervisor's attention, either in writing and minus any kind of drama or emotions, because we know most of the time if you're having a disagreement or maybe not clear on something between you and a coworker, it could raise emotions. Excuse me. We're asking that you please just kind of keep it to the facts so that we can get to the heart of whatever the issue is and hopefully come up with resolution that's going to be beneficial for everyone. So we're going to ask you to please respect the chain of command, meaning if you have an issue or problem, speak with your immediate supervisor first, if possible. If the issue is with your immediate supervisor, please go to their supervisor. So basically follow the chain of command, because in most cases, if there is an issue or a problem, they're the ones who are going to have to help all of us resolve it. So you going to another functional person or another functional manager probably is not going to be able to resolve your issue. If you want to be able to talk about it first with someone who might be able to give you some suggestions, then you can reach out to your particular HR partner. And right now, for the Kensington location, her name is Elisa, but you will get to meet all 4 of the HR partners who will also be providing services to you. We try to resolve whatever the issue is with the least amount of manager interference, because we believe that everyone here is an adult and you should be able to, solve your problems one-on-one. So our first level of resolution is you directly talking to the person that you're having an issue with. And it could be something, I don't want to say minor, but it could be maybe someone is parking in your parking space, or maybe someone took something off your desk without asking your permission. It could be something along those lines. We hope that you would be able to go directly to that person and try to resolve the matter on your own. We want to keep the managers out of it, if at all possible. If, for whatever reason, you have come to me and said, Lynnette, I've asked you twice or 3 times to please stop parking in my parking spot. Is there an issue, or is there something that we need to talk about? And I still, for whatever reason, won't adhere to that or won't accommodate you, then by all means, please take it to your supervisor. Because, obviously there's a disconnect there. We don't want anyone to feel unsupported or feeling resentful because something hasn't been resolved. So if you have tried to first directly talk to that person and you don't think that you're having any success, or maybe my attitude, and hopefully no one here will ever say this, is I can park wherever I want to, and I just kind of blow you off. We hope that that never happens either. But if that is the case, then please go to your manager. Managers will then either talk to me and say, Lynnette, we have assigned parking spaces. I don't understand why you're parking in someone else's parking spot. What's going on? And again, hopefully we can resolve the matter. I know my example is pretty simplistic, But a lot of things start off really small and then they grow. If so, especially if someone feels like they're not being paid attention to. The manager can either coach me, meaning Lynette, please don't ever do that again. That's that person's parking spot. Or if they come back and say, well, that was my parking spot initially, and it seems like both of us were assigned the same space. Okay, then we probably should have the manager look into this. And sometimes mistakes happen, and again, try to coach one or both of us and get to resolution. If that doesn't happen, please get your manager involved. We want them to know what's going on because we want them to resolve it as quickly as possible. Your supervisor or director will investigate your concerns and provide you with an answer within 5 working days. We say 5 working days because your managers, supervisors, directors, and chiefs all are working managers, supervisors, directors, and chiefs. So we think 5 days is a sufficient amount of time for them to try to resolve the issue. Sometimes they can get to it before then, but please, at a minimum, please give them 5 days. If you haven't yet coached one or both of the employees, the manager will then do it. They can facilitate a meeting between me or both of us to say, okay, I found out what happened. The numbers were transposed. Both of you were given the same parking spot number. I've now got it resolved. Lynette, you're going to be parking in this spot, and the other person is going to be parking in that spot, and that should be the end of it. So they can facilitate a meeting. If you still can't agree, for whatever reason, the manager will make the call on whatever the issue is. And they will say, Lynette, I understand that you like that parking spot. However, you have been reassigned to go over here. That's where you need to go. Now, if all of that happens and we still have, someone who's having a hard time with resolving all of this, and I still am parking in the wrong parking spot, that's where HR can get involved. So that's level 3. Again, we try not to get involved if at all possible. We want both of you to be able to resolve your issues among yourselves, if possible, and then if not, directly with your manager. If for whatever reason there isn't a way to create resolution, HR will get involved. And so HR gets involved because of whatever the circumstances are. And usually if the manager is asking for our assistance, it's pretty problematic. And again, we will try to get to the matter as quickly as possible. And we will consult with one or both of you and the manager. We will facilitate a meeting and negotiate a solution. We will put whatever we all walk out of that room with, that agreement, in writing, so everybody knows the rules of the road, and that should be the end of it. So that is our goal. If that doesn't matter, for whatever reason, you're still not happy with whatever the decision is made, you can always go to our CEO, John Messeri, and John will make the final call. After that, it's over. He will say, Lynette, everyone has tried to accommodate you. They've even come up with a different solution. They found another parking spot for you. My expectations are, going forward, you will now park in the newly assigned parking spot to you. The issue stops there. That's it. So again, if you're not happy, if you're the one on the receiving end of whatever the issue is, and you're not happy with that, you can always go to our CEO. I will ask that you please, please, please put it in writing first. He is extremely busy and he might not be able to respond to it right away. And so I don't want you to think that, he's just ignoring you. He's just extremely busy. So please, please do that. But that's basically our policy. Any questions? Okay. Yay. we don't have role play. I miss not having you guys here in person. It loses something via Zoom, but this is better than nothing. So, and I'm sorry, it says NEO. NEO is HR speak for New Employee Orientation. Day 3 was our former process of how we did NEO. We used to have 4 days of NEO, believe it or not, but we think every day is important. So day 1 would have been a tour of our downtown sites or our west side sites, or vice versa. And then day 3 would have been here at Arlington, meeting with everyone in administration for the most part, completing all your paperwork, and then we would go through the policies. So the next one is our open door communication. And it's just as it sounds. We want to create an environment where people feel safe to come and talk to their manager about any issue or concern that they might have. And we try to create that environment by having an open door policy where the managers have been interacting with you for the most part. So there's not any hesitation for you to go to them. Okay. So the purpose of our policy is to create open and honest communication between managers and employees on a daily basis. Most of the time that might happen. However, some of you guys are going to be assigned to the field. So your interaction with your direct supervisor might be via text or via phone call. You might not be able to talk to them face to face on a daily basis, but hopefully you will be able to interact with them as often as possible. That's what we hope. We hope that you will seek counsel, provide or solicit any feedback or raise any concerns that you might have. Again, our goal is to create and foster a really healthy, safe work environment for everybody. And we want you to have any questions that you might have, something you're not sure about, some communication that comes out and you're saying, I need some more clarity. We would like for you to feel safe enough to go talk to your manager about that. So again, we hope that our managers create a working environment where your input is welcomed, advice is freely given, and any and all issues are early and candidly shared without any fear of retaliation when the information is provided in good faith. So even if you are concerned that, my manager might not like what I'm going to say, that's okay. As long as you're doing it respectfully, we would hope that you would be able to, again, say those things and discuss those things, because it could be something that maybe you have more insight into, or maybe they do. They're not going to know if you don't say anything. And again, we expect and hope all of our managers are open to hearing whatever your comments are. It doesn't mean they're going to agree with you, because they might say, you know what, that's a very good idea, Lynnette. We've tried that in the past, and let me explain to you why that won't work. So we hope that it'll create that type of dialogue. It doesn't mean that we don't want your input. We do, but we might not be able to actually enact it. So employees, you guys are responsible for bringing to your manager, again, in a professional manner, any concern, complaint, suggestion, or observation that's affecting productivity or morale. And what you could be seeing is perhaps someone, maybe not even someone in our agency, but maybe a vendor, is saying some inappropriate things to a coworker. And for whatever reason, the coworker is, not speaking up for themselves. Please share that with your manager, because they need to know that, because we need to stop whatever that behavior is. Hopefully we can empower that employee to speak up for themselves, but if they can't, we would hope that you would do it. And again, it's not like getting someone in trouble. Again, we're just trying to create an environment where everyone feels appreciated and supported. So the chain of command, Again, we encourage you to use the chain of command when you have any concerns. Openness is an essential to quickly resolving any of our concerns, and recognize the agency's issues as they arrive and address the changing needs of agency members and staff. We hope by doing this, we can create some positive outcomes. So our goal is to let you know that we listened to you, we heard you, and that your input was appreciated. Management then hopefully can earn your trust, your respect, and your loyalty. We hope that it creates a very good feeling of being here and promotes retention, and that the people concerned is seen as a great place to work and helps us with promoting for our recruiting. Any questions? No? Okay.
Oh, just a quick question.
Sure.
Are you sharing a PowerPoint with us, a new one?
Yeah, did you not see that one?
No, I don't think we can see it. I just see the problem solving one.
Uh-oh. Okay. Sorry, you guys. Yeah, the other one. Okay, let's try this again. I will send these to you guys so you'll have them. So I apologize for that. This is my first time doing this way through our Zoom, so I'm sorry you're my maiden voyage. That is not my intent to have it all jacked up for you. Thank you, Carrie. So, now. Do you want to see it?
Yeah. No, let's see. We're going to a different PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where is it at?
It should be on my desktop.
Oh. Here?
It's the discrimination and harassment.
Let's see. Where is it at?
Let's see. What happened to all of these down here? I have them open too. Sorry. Sorry, you guys. Hold on a second.
Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, stop. Oh.
It should be. I think I can't even see the title. Oh, this is it.
Open. Share screen.
Great. Okay. Can you guys see that one? Yay! Thank you, Carrie. Okay, so this one is the one that's, all of them are critical, but this one is really critical. It talks about discrimination and workplace harassment. It's in our company handbook. The policy is 5.7. And we spend more time on this one because this is really, really important to us. So we are an equal opportunity employer. We are also a federal contractor, and we do not allow any discrimination or workplace harassment of any kind in our facility. And we need you to help us with ensuring this doesn't happen. So we want to talk to you about, first of all, what the definition of harassment and discrimination is, because a lot of people will say that they feel like they're being harassed or discriminated against, and in fact, that's not the legal definition. Perhaps the behavior is inappropriate, perhaps it shouldn't have been said, but it doesn't necessarily reach the threshold of the legal definition of discrimination. It doesn't mean that it's acceptable. We don't want it happening at all in our facility. So please, if you have a concern about something, bring it to our attention. Again, we will look into it, we will investigate it, we will let you know if it's in fact just inappropriateness, lack of professionalism, perhaps someone said something that was blatantly stupid, but it might not be discriminatory. So let's go through that, because this one takes a little bit longer. This one by itself is quite lengthy, so I might jump around a little bit because I really want to touch on some key points, because I'm also mindful of the time. And again, I get kind of off track because I talk a lot, but our discrimination and harassment policy, we're committed to creating an environment where all employees are expected to conduct themselves in a businesslike and professional manner and not engage in any discriminatory or harassing behavior. Now, these are the regulations that oversee us in California. And so if you know anything about the law, discrimination came about in 1964 from the Civil Rights Act, which was signed into law in 1965 by Lyndon Baines Johnson. The overseeing agency that oversees discrimination and harassment federally is the Department of Labor. In California, we not only follow what the Department of Labor says, we also have our own agency that oversees us. So since we're in California, we're going to talk about them. And so that's where these bullet points come from. California's Fair Employment Housing Act, or in HR world, we call it FEHA. They oversee our Title VII here in California. And a lot of these laws have even more teeth in California than the federal guidelines. And we do that deliberately because we live in a state where we don't want anyone to feel discriminated or harassed in any way, ever. So our governing agency is the Department of Labor federally, but here in California, we also follow our state regulations. Our PowerPoint presentation is really, it's to create a dialogue and maybe spark some different thoughts that maybe you hadn't thought about. And if you have any questions, you can talk to anyone in HR, anyone hopefully in your management team, or our CEO, John Messeri. So it's going to have some quizzes, scenarios, and different little things for you to think about, and perhaps you didn't know. There's no test. We say test, but there's no test. And just to see how you answer the questions. So again, our policy covers 3 types of illegal and prohibited behavior. So discrimination, we'll talk about that in just a second, what that is. Workplace harassment, and number 3 is sexual harassment. If you look at it, 2 and 3 are broken out separately on purpose. In California, workplace harassment and sexual harassment are viewed at the same level. Neither is acceptable. So please, if you feel that you have been a victim of, or again, maybe you've witnessed something from a coworker or a vendor or someone saying something to you, to a coworker, please by all means say something. Discrimination and workplace harassment are based upon an individual's protected class status. So these are the laws under the federal guidelines. And these have been around my whole life, so I think most people are probably familiar with them. We'll go through them pretty quickly. But you cannot discriminate based on race, color, or national origin. Does everyone know what national origin is? So does someone want to answer?
For example, like my family's from Mexico, so like anything related to that would be, you know.
So perhaps you weren't born here or your family wasn't born here, but they are now naturalized citizens. So that's national origin. You cannot discriminate against someone for that. Another thing, again, federally, sex, including pregnancy. Now keep in mind, these laws were written back in 1965. And for the most part, Congress hasn't done a lot to update them. So some of them are going to seem somewhat antiquated and silly for today, well, I was looking at them in 2020, but in 1965, this was a big deal. So you couldn't discriminate against a woman for being pregnant because back then, before this law was signed, you could. People could actually deliberately not hire a woman because she's pregnant. And their rationale was, well, I don't want to hire someone and then she goes out on pregnancy disability and then I'm stuck again without the job. That's no reason not to hire someone. And I can tell you here at the People Concern, we have hired people in their third trimester, so as long as they are capable and competent, we hire the best qualified person for the job, whoever it is. Also, age, 40 from a federal perspective is the age of discrimination. That sounds kind of antiquated today, but back then 40, most people lived to be 67. The locks, and most people retired at 62. And, they only had 5 years of retirement and they were dead. So back then, a lot of people at the age of 40 were considered middle age. Excuse me. And a lot of companies didn't hire people over the age of 40. There was another thing that was happening back then that we don't really have that much anymore, but they were pension plans, meaning we didn't have 401ks or 403bs back then. Companies invested in their employees, and if the company was successful, the employees got a pension plan. Well, those for the most part have disappeared, but a lot of people didn't hire people because of the age, after the age of 40, because they knew they were going to have to start paying into their pension plan. Also, disability. Another thing that was happening in the middle of all of this civil rights was Vietnam. So we had a lot of our veterans who were disabled, and people deliberately didn't hire people that were disabled. And so this law provided a protection for them. And the next is anyone who's covered under family medical leave, who needed to perhaps be a caregiver for someone, they didn't have any protections. Anyone who uses the military. Now, I'm a military brat, so this was near and dear for me, but excuse me, the war in Vietnam was not a very popular war. And a lot of veterans were treated horribly when they came back. And a lot of people did not hire them because of their own, political beliefs about that war. Well, this provided protections for them, so they were not discriminated against. There was another thing that was going on in the middle of all of this during civil rights was, and you see it every February, you see the black and white photos of all of the different civil rights events and beatings and dogs being sicked on, hoses being, people being hosed. They talked about it a lot during the Edmund Pettus Bridge with former Congressman John Lewis. There was a lot of civil unrest happening in the Black community. Black people were basically under siege. But another thing they don't talk about, and had it not been for these people, civil rights would have never passed. There were a lot of people who were the guardians of civil rights, a lot. And they were down south, and a lot of them were white. Had it not been for them, civil rights would have never passed. They provided coverage and passage for the civil rights freedom riders. They provided food for them and shelter. And those individuals, in most cases, were treated worse than Black people. Their homes were bombed. Their kids were harassed and tortured, beat up on. It was awful the way they were treated. But they didn't believe in discrimination. They just didn't. And they really believed that what they were doing was right. John F. Kennedy's brother, Robert or Bobby, went to the South to see what was going on. He couldn't believe it. And he came back and told his brother, we've got to do something for these people who basically are standing up, kind of like what's happening right now with all of the civil unrest. There are a lot of people who were part of the civil rights movement. And this particular regulation provides coverage for them. A person who associates with the protected class, meaning they weren't protected, but what they were doing was protecting Black citizens in their communities. The next one, again, kind of as history always repeats itself, some things that we're dealing with today, it's a law that imposes unlawful employment practices. So basically, we today would call those whistleblowers. Those individuals also needed protection, just as they do today. Whistleblowers, whether it's at a federal level or a state level, have protections because they are doing what they believe to be right for the greater good. They're not trying to make money on it. They're not trying to capitalize. They know cigarettes cause cancer. These are scientists and doctors who said, yeah, cigarettes cause cancer. Regardless of what the CEOs of all the tobacco industry said, they were like, yeah, cigarettes cause cancer. And here's the data. So they were basically putting their reputations, their careers, their families' livelihoods on the line. And to be able to provide protections for them, that's where that regulation came from. And then any other group that is a protected class is defined by federal law. So those are our federal guidelines. That's what we must adhere to. But in addition, let's go to our state, because I love our state. So our state not only follows those federal guidelines, but we always have to add a little something to what we think they have, because we, of course, we want to make ours even more special. So California did something that only a few states had back in 2007, but we made it, we pushed it all the way to the Supreme Court. And what that was same-sex marriage. We've always had civil unions in our state. We don't care who marries who. We're going to have a party. Someone's going to have a cake. There's going to be a reception. We don't care. But in 2007, 2008, California pushed it all the way to the Supreme Court. And same-sex marriage is now the law of the land across the entire country. Because other places, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, they would say things like, oh, that's fine for California. We're not doing that here. But this is now the law of the land. And so we have same-sex marriage across the country. California has always been a trailblazer when it comes to employees' rights. I always tell people California is a blue state. We're not only blue, we're navy blue. It has always been a pro-employee state, and it probably always will be. So our laws tend to side on the side of employees. As an employee, I personally like that. It makes sure that we as employers are doing the right thing. So California pushed that law into place. Another thing we did was sexual orientation and identity. So for people that are transitioning or thinking about transitioning or have transitioned, they too have protections. And we want to adhere to that. We have a lot of people here. We have hopefully you guys will get to see all of our different sites at some time, but we are extremely diverse. We hire the best and the brightest, regardless of who you are. We are an extremely diverse agency, and I really like that. Also, medical conditions, we don't care about your medical condition. If you are able to perform the job and you are the best qualified candidate, we are going to hire you. Another thing that California also did, which hasn't really caught on across the country, but it falls under FMLA or Family Medical Leave, is provide protections for HIV and AIDS. That is a big deal for us here in California, well, across the country, but especially here in California. We don't discriminate against anyone. We actually have a program that's downtown that deals specifically with people with HIV. And it's a very successful program. And as long as you take your medicine, you can have a long, successful life. And I always ask people, if you think about it, there's a guy, you guys might have heard of him, by the name of Irving Magic Johnson. He plays for his little team called the Lakers years ago. But Magic, when he came out and said, yes, I've got the virus, everybody just recoiled. They didn't know what to do. People were in shock. All of a sudden, his sponsors left him. It was horrific. I remember those days. It was horrific. And since then, we have educated ourselves. We've gotten better and smarter. And he is now, according to him, virus-free, which is great. And we want to make sure that not only Magic, but everyone who is infected with the virus is treated the same way. So we're really, really happy about the program that we have here. It's called HOPA. It's downtown on Skid Row, but it works with a lot of our clients who are HIV positive. Another thing is the military or veteran status. We don't care about any of that. We support the military. Again, prior to me working here, I've always worked for defense contractors. And again, like I said, I'm a military brat. So we have always believed in a strong military in our state and especially in our country. Another thing that California makes sure that we don't discriminate against is political affiliations or activities. And as I said earlier, California is a blue state. So for a lot of people who are conservative, they feel like they don't really have a place here. They don't really have a voice. They don't really have anyone championing their concerns. Well, that's not true. All voices are welcomed here. We want everyone to feel connected, to feel like they have a part of, and that they get to weigh in. If you are a resident of the state, we don't care about your political affiliations. One of the areas that the EEOC, which is called Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, is looking into is Hollywood. A lot of actors have said that they believe they are not being called back for all these different roles because of their political affiliation. They believe because they are either libertarian, independents, or perhaps even Republicans, they're not getting ample opportunity for employment. And the EEOC is saying, that's not okay. We're not okay with that any more than you not hiring someone because of their race or their gender or their sexual identity. So they are holding Hollywood accountable, as they should. No one should not be denied the opportunity for employment, housing, or anything else because of their political affiliations or activities. And last but not least, and I hope this eventually catches on to the other 49 states, is we have a very robust domestic violence and assault stalking law. I am really excited about that because we actually have a program here called Sojourn. And they're the group that really gets me up and has me coming to work every day. They deal with people in the worst of shapes. And in spite of that, they're able, and I've seen it, they're able to get people to stop looking down, to start looking up. They start, feeling good about themselves. All of a sudden, they have purpose. And in a lot of cases, they have little people with them. And so our programs deal with people of domestic violence, men and women. So I don't want you to think that if a man is harassed or assaulted, that we don't have a service for them. We do. We don't care who it is. We don't believe in any kind of domestic violence. But this is also in our state laws in California. This came about directly from Hollywood. We benefit from it because we live here. Hollywood successfully lobbied Sacramento and said, we know we're in entertainment, whether it's through sports, music, movies, whatever. We know we have a public persona, but we also should be able to have a private life. We should not have people stalking us in the bushes and hiding out when we take our kids to daycare or church or wherever. We should be able to do those things privately like other people. And Sacramento agreed. And so these laws are now in our state charter. I hope it catches on with the other 49 states. It's imperative that we make sure that we are resolving these issues. And some of your clients, unfortunately, might be the recipients of domestic violence. If that is the case, work with your supervisor and your manager. And, again, our Sojourn team will be able to provide whatever assistance that you or they might need. So please keep that in mind. So just let me go through the definition of discrimination. It's basically anyone who has the power, meaning your supervisor or someone in authority is making decisions regarding employment, hiring, firing, promoting, transferring, demotions, benefit, comp, anything that can impact you. If they are making those determinations based on any Title VII classification, race, sex, gender, whatever it is, that is absolutely not okay at all. Again, if it happens or if you think it's happening, please let us know. I've had people come and tell me, Lynnette, my supervisor is a racist. And I'm like, what? Oh yeah, they're a racist. And I'm like, well, why do you say that? Well, they're writing me up because I'm late. And I'm like, okay, stop being late. And they're like, but everybody else is late too. And I'm like, okay, doesn't make the behavior discriminatory, but it is gonna make me stop and think, okay, why is this person being singled out? And what you might not know, and what I have found out in the past is perhaps those people have different work schedules that they don't have to share with you. Maybe someone is coming in later. Maybe they have a completely different work style. So again, it might look a certain way, but in fact it isn't. And so that's where we, HR, will then let the manager know, okay, what you're doing is perfectly acceptable. However, the optics of it are you're treating people differently. So please be mindful of how you interact with staff. Make sure everyone understands what your expectations are and treat everyone fairly. It doesn't mean their behavior is discriminatory. Maybe, someone needs to leave a little early or come in a little late and they're adjusting their work schedule. And with your manager's permission, and if the business can support it, you can adjust your work schedule. But you have to work with them to do that. So it might look like someone is coming in late when in fact, maybe they're only taking a 30-minute lunch versus an hour lunch. And so it looks that way. But again, we just try to remind the managers to be cognizant of the appearance of it. I'm gonna go quickly through the next one. Examples are not hiring someone who's pregnant. Of course, we don't care. As long as they are qualified, we're gonna hire you, period. Another thing, a lot of people, not necessarily here in California, but people won't hire people that were over 45. This was a big deal up in Silicon Valley, especially people that are coders. They kept thinking, well, if you're not right out of college and you don't have this last, skill set, we can't hire you for coding. And I always think, okay, Steve Jobs, Gates, and the two guys that formulated Google, they're in their 60s. So obviously they can code. So again, we don't not hire anyone because of their age at all. Harassment is unwelcomed, unwanted, or offensive conduct based on a protected class status. Okay. Now, my examples are extreme. They're supposed to be. And it's little things like this that people do without, in most cases, thinking. They speak first, and then it's like, oops. So, saying things where they think it's all fun and, jokes, and referring to people in derogatory ways, meaning, you call someone who wears a turban a towel head, or a Hispanic worker a beaner, or a Jewish worker a cheapskate. None of that's okay, ever. And I will tell you where it really gets challenging is within particular ethnic groups. I have had Black coworkers tell me, well, I can say these things to this person because they're Black too. It is not okay. Calling someone out their name, talking about somebody's mama, all that stuff. Don't do any of that. None of it. It is not okay at all. Also, be very mindful of the music that you're listening to. If you're listening to a bunch of rap, that's fine, but please put in your earbuds. The language that you're listening to might trigger a coworker or even a client. Please be respectful and be mindful of your surroundings. Don't do it. Don't just assume it's okay. Everyone doesn't like it. But I'm the same way about Christmas music. Please, during the holidays, we're not going to tell you that you can't support it and you can't do it, but please be mindful of everyone else around you. Because if someone else is Muslim or Jewish or an atheist or an agnostic, it might not be okay for them. So please, please, please be considerate of your coworker. Sexual harassment is unwanted, unwelcomed, or offensive sexual advances. Again, someone with the power who is making overt or covert suggestions about, if you do this for me, I'll do that. Not okay in any way, shape, or form at all, ever. Never, ever, ever. I also need to say, because people look at me crazy when I say it, do not ever have sex with the clients at all. Nothing. Don't touch them. Nothing. You can't do it. Don't. People look at me like, why would you say that? And then 6 months later, I'm having that conversation with that person. Don't do it. Please don't. Not okay, ever. Examples of sexual harassment, again, these are extremes, is someone saying, if you come away with me for the weekend and do these things, there's probably going to be a promotion in it for you. Never okay. If you are in line for a promotion, it's because of the work that you've done. It is not because of anything else. And we don't want anyone to ever feel that they're being pressured or put in a position where this is necessary. If it happens, please let your manager know or immediately contact HR. Just not okay. Also, impacting people because of their disability. Not okay. Believing they've been subjected to any workplace harassment or sexual harassment. Please, please, please let us know. Okay, so here are my true and false answers. So we'll go through them all together since everything pops up all at once. Why is it important for you to report discrimination in the workplace with either harassment or sexual harassment? And these are just a few of the answers, but the answers are here because employees will be hurt emotionally. Productivity, of course, is going to go down. Absenteeism goes up because who wants to work in an environment like that? The work of the agency is also being jeopardized. Employees are fearful of one another and the morale is reduced. We don't want any of that behavior to go on at all. Please, 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 if you experience any of this, please let us know. Our job is to make sure that, number one, that's not going on, and number two, to create an environment that's healthy for you and your coworkers. We also know the reason people don't come forward is because they're afraid of losing their jobs. They're a fear of retaliation. They're afraid of getting someone into trouble, disrupting the workplace, and people saying, oh, girl, I didn't mean it. I was just playing. Don't play. Don't ever play with people like that. It's not okay. You might find it funny, but no one else will. Don't do it. People are afraid of feeling embarrassed, and I have heard this where guys feel like, oh, some woman's hitting on me, and if I don't go along with it, then I'm less than a man or I'm less than a woman. It's not okay. Do not ever let that happen. And most importantly, and this, you will hear this not just here, but I think nationally, people are afraid that they're not going to be believed. It takes a lot for people to come forward and report things. We are mindful of that. We are so aware of how difficult it is. We handle these matters as expeditiously, as sensitively, and as confidentially as we humanly can. We can't promise complete confidentiality because I have a responsibility to share with my chief and our CEO any behaviors like this. So I cannot promise you, but I can tell you this: the only people who will be aware of what I'm doing or what you're experiencing are people who absolutely have a legitimate reason to know. If anybody finds out other than that, it'll be because you told them, not us. We will not breach that. We know that our word is our bond, and it is important that we have that type of credibility with all of you. So we will not breach it at all. Discrimination in the workplace, what can a supervisor do? We want your supervisors to set a tone of a respectful work environment, have clear expectations that discrimination and workplace harassment will never be tolerated. Put in a mechanism for reporting if anything like this ever happens. Guard against retaliation, because if you come forward and tell us something, we don't want anyone saying, well, she snitched, and so therefore that's not going to happen. We will ensure that you will be protected. And please be sensitive to the people that are involved. Again, we know it's very delicate. It's in most cases it's embarrassing. It's just not easy for someone to come forward and say. And so again, we want to be mindful of the person who's experiencing it and the person who's being accused. Because just because you're accused doesn't make it so. Because, we have people, unfortunately, who will say things and it's not true. So please be mindful of that. So with that, I know my time is short. The rest of my examples are just like that. They're kind of, what would you do? What would you do in this example? How would you handle this? So I'm going to have Carrie send all of these to you, and they're just kind of, just look through the questions. And again, just see, how would I respond? Or what would I respond? Or I never even thought about that. And then if you have any questions, by all means, let me know, let your supervisor know, and we will try to resolve and respond as quickly as possible. So with that, I'm going to shut up because it's 12 o'clock, and I told Carrie I was going to stay right on point. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know. But if not, let's see. So Carrie, do I